All right, everybody, welcome tonight to PEP Talk, the Maryland Forward Party. My name is Matt Byers, and I have with me
Tanya Sweat and
Pete Oliver Kruger. All right, so prioritizing epic problems is the full name of this, and we shortened it to PEP Talk. And basically what it gives us is an alternative way to have a debate where instead of fighting about solutions, which we often do, we instead can start to find some common ground over talking about the problems that we want to solve. So the number one rule of a pep talk is no solutions. That often gets us to defining much better problems that we can look at in the long term.
Rule number 2 is that everybody gets 1 minute and then we go on to the next person. That way more people get a chance to talk.
Yes, it's the collaboration that's really important here. And on top of that, we have to take one more step besides just agreeing on what all the problems are and prioritizing them and then not making a higher level problem worse when we do have a solution to a problem.
Right. Yeah, when we generally focus on only one problem at a time, we tend to create new problems or make other problems worse.
Okay, the prompt question that we gave to ourselves as leadership was, what problems, if they were not addressed by the Forward Party, would make us as leaders of the group consider wanting to leave the party if it was not handled?
We had recently received several emails because we had not taken a public stance on the conflict between Israel and Palestine. It got us thinking about what issues are important enough that if the Forward Party did not take a stance on them, we ourselves, as leaders of that party, would consider leaving.
All right, so this one is going to be interesting because it came in two parts. So the first half is the original debate about the content of this idea, and it did get voted in, and then later we went back and proposed moving it. I think we moved it up in the list to a higher position. So we're going to show both of those parts here together as one piece, but they did occur separately, and I think it gives a good example of another portion of the process. You can add stuff to the list, and you can also come back later and move things around in the list, and each of those can be a separate debate in and of themselves.
Yeah, and it also shows that nothing has to be static. Just because it's in a spot doesn't mean that that's where it's going to be for the rest of its life.
Yeah. Another thing that I really liked about this example was you don't have to have a well-formed idea to get started. The group will make it a well-formed idea. And so you'll see this person, when he brings up his idea, he wasn't going to propose the idea because he didn't think it was good enough. Well, let's give it a try and see where it happens. The worst thing happens, we spend 10 minutes and we put it back in the backlog. And this actually turned out to be one of our more important ideas.
Right, and there's nothing wrong with throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks.
Yeah.
And sometimes, as you keep saying with the Ratatouille principle, not every idea is a good idea, but you don't know where a good idea is going to come from. And this is a perfect example of that.
Exactly.
I may skip because I think I generalized the prompt a little too much down to basically what would cause me to leave the Forward Party or consider leaving the Forward Party, not necessarily a current problem that is not being addressed by the Forward Party.
I would say that your problem statement fits the description. It fits the...
Okay. Well, then let's go.
All right, let's go. Where do you want to put it, or...
Another good question, because it's a time sensitive one. It's not one that applies, 8 months from now, 9 months from now.
Slightly less epic. It is more shortened.
Yeah. So in terms of, right here and right now, I think it's very important, or especially in the coming months, but in the overall, hopefully long history of the organization, not so much. So I'll say 4. I think keeping it where it is now probably makes sense.
All right. Brandon, is this for a clarifying question?
Oh, sorry. My hand was up from last time, but I actually do have a clarification. Yes.
Okay.
So, what is my so Matt, if would this statement still hold if you removed the words dishonest or dangerous? In that Forward supported any third party candidate for president?
I would I think I'm gonna take a rules point here. I think you're making a suggestion.
No,
Uh,
I'm
I
thought it
think
was-
I get where your question's coming from.
my question is I'm not suggesting to remove those words yet because I want to understand if Matt is, if it has to be a specific type of third party candidate or any third party candidate.
Yes, specific, dishonest or dangerous, not a blanket anti third party presidential candidate.
Does this hold past the 2024 election cycle?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I guess my opinion on dangerous and dishonest candidates probably won't change in future election cycles. So while while I was certainly thinking about this one, just because in the here and the now with real names as opposed to hypothetical, yeah, absolutely. If we wanted, we could remove, we could remove the date there.
Similar type of question.
Yeah.
Is the intent to be specifically about the role of the president or any elected official?
Yeah, I think specifically president.
Okay, thanks. Matt, I know you said you were thinking of specific president, and I get where that's coming from. Just as a question or something to consider, can we get continued value out of this or expanded value out of this for like the organization? Well, looking at other positions, just something to consider.
I think there's definitely like wholesale value in not supporting dishonest and dangerous candidates anywhere on the ballot. But I think as we, as a third party, start running our own candidates in Maryland and across the country, there's going to be a really tangible kind of real risk reward scenario we're going to have a ratio that we're going to have to play out with every single race we decide to enter. And I think that the reward outweighs the risk. The lower you go down on the ballot, the earlier we are in this process in terms of local and city and state elections. Whereas it's just not realistic in the near future, probably not, that throwing support behind a third party presidential candidate would yield positive results. And that's where the here and the now of the 2024 came from it. But I do think Byer's suggestion on removing the time there made sense.
Yeah, that helps. Thanks.
So I have two things. One, I wonder, is third party necessary in there at all? If Ford became so desperate for support relevance, it aligned itself with or supported a dishonest or dangerous candidate. Period. I wonder if third party is necessary. And then I wonder how we define dangerous.
Yeah, I was waiting for that one to come up because as I wrote it, in my own head, I'm like, that's subject. We don't need to dance around it. I wrote this about a very specific candidate for a very specific race, but we're broadening it as we should here. But I think I don't think third party is necessary in that sense with the statement the way it is right now.
Dangerous candidate, I would say, instead of dangerous third party candidate.
Okay.
But how do we define dangerous?
Yeah.
So my slight suggestion was that I don't think it matters what's it for, as far as like for support or relevance, that if Forward became so desperate, it aligned itself with or supported a dishonest or dangerous candidate. So just a slight tweak on that as well.
I think that works. Yeah.
Okay. And then Ben is next.
No, I was gonna make a similar point we just said, where why not just remove the if Ford became so desperate part and just it aligned itself with dishonest or dangerous candidates, assuming we're still talking more broadly beyond like the presidential election cycle.
You want to do that too?
I'm sorry, is it a different change than what you'd suggested in terms of removing the reasons why it's desperate?
Yeah, I'll demonstrate it here. So he's saying take this phrase out. So it's just if Forward aligned itself with or supported a dishonest or dangerous candidate.
I think it works because I guess what I'm forecasting there with became so desperate is what I see is the most likely path for that happening. Not that it will happen, but if it were to happen, I think it would come out of some sort of uh, financial or manpower desperation. But yeah, I think we can remove became so desperate as well and just cut right to the point.
All right.
So I was kind of wondering too if we could align this with what we already have in the candidate pledge, because essentially I think the candidate pledge captures a bit of what we want to exclude from the party already, and maybe helps define dangerous to some degree. It's almost as if the candidate pledge doesn't already filter out dangerous candidates, it probably should. And then this number 4 could be reworded if the Ford party ever, aligned itself with somebody who we believed did not, somebody who did not sign the candidate pledge, or we could not in good faith believe that they were doing so honestly.
Do you want to make any modifications, Heinz?
I hear where Adam's coming from, but no, I don't. Not at this point.
Okay.
I kind of liked where Adam was going in some ways. Like, in a attempt to define dangerous, can we at least get it back to our values, like our core values? Or do you think danger goes beyond those core values?
I think it's tricky because, and this gets into that. I think that the biggest issue is that it's we haven't, defining danger it's subjective. It depends on what we're talking about. There are nationwide. There might be some on the call, no judgment, but there are a number of forward supporters who believe that RFK Jr. should be the president of the United States. I think personally supporting that is very dangerous, but they disagree. And I just, I don't know if any of the, I also don't think any presidential candidate's going to be signing our pledge anytime soon. So I don't know, with it tied to the presidential cycle and not just elections across the board, I don't know how much the pledge and our values, our specific values, tie into it, but I'm not sure.
And that helps clarify for me too. Thank you.
Sure.
Mine was, would you accept instead of it being just for president, if it was for a national position? What's the phrasing on that?
Federal office?
Yeah, for federal office.
It gets tricky because I think there are congressional races where I think that it's not dangerous, depending on the district. Senate, it is dangerous. I think I want to keep it at president.
Yeah.
Suggestion: dishonest or dangerous. Would it be helpful to put anti-democratic in there? I mean, I guess that doesn't really speak to the exact issue you were talking about, but it's going to the point of supporting someone who is dangerous. So maybe we don't want to define dangerous anyway. If I'm fine if that doesn't help, but I just thought I would throw that out there.
Yeah, I kind of like that. Something as soon as you said anti-democratic, I kind of went to like a candidate who is furthering the likelihood of an undemocratic outcome, or something in that respect. I would say, yeah, we can add undemocratic as that's the specific suggestion. Yeah, I think it helps.
How would you word that?
Is that for me or Robert to answer?
That's for you to answer.
Okay. If Ford aligned itself with or supported a dishonest, dangerous, or undemocratic candidate for president this election cycle, or in the elections.
We just hit our 10-minute time limit. Does anybody want to make a motion to extend debate?
Sure, I will.
Do we have a second?
Second.
All right, we are adding another 5 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I guess I still wanted to tie the notion of dangerous maybe back to at least the principles in the candidate pledge, because like half of it is a whole section of just creating a vibrant democracy. That's closer, but maybe does it make sense to say a candidate that grossly violates the principles in our candidate pledge?
When we say candidate pledge, I actually don't know if Nationals ever actually came out with their own candidate pledge. I know that was a project going on at one point. Did they?
They did.
Okay, so I'm assuming we're referring to that one from a national level, or
And in fairness, I was only looking at the Maryland one. I wasn't aware of the national one.
well, I think the national one took a lot from ours, assuming the two documents are not in stark contrast from one another.
The direction I'm going in is that dangerous might be subjective. Where
Yeah.
somebody's dangerous is somebody else's outside the box thinker or something.
Yeah.
So it helps ground it a little bit to put it in those more specific terms, but and hopefully our candidate pledge does a good enough job. But in a way, I'm sort of rephrasing something I said already. So if we really like dangerous, then that's okay. So like if forward aligned itself with or supported a candidate that grossly violated the principles of the Maryland Forward Party candidate and affiliate pledge.
Yeah, I agree. I think dishonest or dangerous is absolutely up to each person and how they judge that. So I'm fine with this.
Can I suggest the word authoritarian instead of undemocratic?
I don't think it should replace undemocratic. We could add it if we want, but at a certain point, I think we're just adding
Yeah, I'm not
all
trying
the
to add,
negative adjectives.
yeah, I'm not trying to add extra words. I was
Yeah.
My response on that, just to go in the same direction, was that you can be undemocratic by being anarchist, and not be authoritarian. And I think both of those are a problem. Any other points of debate? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Do I hear a motion to take a vote?
yes.
All right, Byers, any second?
Yeah, I'll second.
Second by PJ. All right, taking a vote. Any objections to positioning dangerous candidates in slot number 4? Once, twice, 3 times. Oh. Are you objecting, PJ?
Yeah, sorry, and I should have brought this up in debate.
That's okay. We're just taking votes right now. So
Just wondering. I'm just wondering if it needs to go higher because
Yeah, I'm actually going to object as well because now that we've rewritten it.
Yep. All right. So I'm going to give you 2 options here. So we can vote this in the position that it is, and then somebody else can propose to move it up the list. If we don't vote it in right now, it will not be on the list at all. We had already moved into the vote stage, so Matt does not get to move it to a new position while we're in the middle of a vote. So just logistical rules there.
Gotcha.
All right. So Heinz, PJ, do you still object to adding it in position 4?
No.
I withdraw.
Okay. All right. So we're back down to 0 objections.
A little bit of peer pressure.
Any abstentions? All right. Hearing none, it passes at position 4, dangerous candidates.
I like the fact, I just want to comment, that we define dangerous candidates by all the language that comes after it.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, so now this is when we move into the second part of the debate where we start to move it up and down in the list. So you're going to see a bunch of different cases being made for should this go above or below each of the different statements, and what is the implication of it being higher order or a lower order problem for each of the different cases.
And I have to admit that when I first saw this come up and was participating in this, I was like, okay, it's great where it is. I don't think it's that much of a high priority that it's higher than some of the other things that we've got. But then the discussion and the testing made it convinced me,
yeah,
that it really did need to be where it ended up.
Yeah. I am going to make a motion that we move dangerous candidates up. I think I'm putting it in position 2. I'll say it, I guess, this way. I think it is a bigger problem if we are supporting somebody who does not support our values, who's grossly violating the candidate pledge and being dishonest or democratic, even if it means that we end up having to dictate a policy stance in order to make sure that we are not supporting dangerous candidates. So that's the first move. And then the second move is that we might, in that process, disenfranchise some people who want to support a dangerous candidate, and I think that's okay.
And if I could add to that, you can't protect candidate or people from disenfranchisement if you have a dangerous candidate.
I think that's fair too.
Clarifying question. If we agree that it should be moved up, but think it should be moved up either higher or lower than what you have suggested, what's our course of action?
You can, during debate, try to encourage me to move it down or up.
Okay.
And if I don't make that choice with you, you can always choose in a future round to move it down or up yourself.
Understood. Okay. Thank you.
Does anybody wish to enter into debate?
I'll go with debate.
All right. Heading into debates. Hines is up first.
I think you should put dangerous candidates at number 1. Because at the end of the day, if a dangerous candidate is sitting in the big chair, they can do whatever they want, and all of our values and policy stances and everything goes out the window because they're already in office.
I will accept that. Oh, well, here's one point in here. So actually, I'm respond back to Hines. In order to keep a dangerous candidate from being supported, what if we ended up favoring one religion?
I'm having a hard time visualizing an example of that.
All right, I'm going to leave that as is. I think the risk is low. Any other points of debate? Going once, going twice. Okay. Is there a movement on the floor for a vote?
Yes.
Second. Okay, I'll second it. Let's take a vote. Any opposition? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Any abstentions? Going once, going twice. It is accepted unanimously at slot number 1.
Interesting, because going back now and looking at this pep talk, we have had some events that have happened afterwards that play right into this discussion.
Yeah.
Especially on this problem where we talked about the meaning of the word dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And what came to mind to me is the Supreme Court's recent ruling on presidential immunity.
Mm-hmm.
And how we cleaned up this epic problem. It really dances or complements nicely the ruling, no matter how you feel about it. Because with the Supreme Court now saying a president basically is immune, or any act done while a person is president is an official act that you can't prosecute the person for, dangerous wouldn't have fit with the change in the law. And so this is a perfect example of how going through this debate, this type of debate, helps you clarify things in a forward-looking way, even though you don't always know what's coming down the road.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for joining us for this episode of the PEP Talk Podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Email us at maryland@forwardparty.com and let us know what you liked and what we can do better. And we'll see you again at a future episode of PEP Talk Podcast with the Maryland Forward Party.